What's up, everybody? Clark Spalding, your mortgage superman here. Today, I have brought in a special guest to help me out with a very special topic. Do you ever feel like your money has control of you instead of it being the other way around? Do you feel that you're constantly living paycheck to paycheck and worried about if you'll be able to pay your next bill? Do you want to save up for a down payment so that you can buy a home, but you're not quite sure where to start? If any of those questions resonate with you, you need a budget. And to help us out with that, I brought in my good friend Paul. He's going to help us out with some simple guidelines that you can follow and also some firsthand experiences that he learned himself when it comes to budgeting. Paul, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Clark. So today I want to go over a system of budgeting, right? I am not saying this is the only way to budget. There are as many ways to budget, I guess, as there are people, but I do want to say this is the only way that budgeting has worked for me. And I am a nerd. I like math, I like numbers, and I like spreadsheets. And I still struggled to actually budget. I'd spent probably a decade put numbers in a spreadsheet at the beginning of the month, and then I'd live out the month. And then at the end of the month, I'd come and check the spreadsheet and see I was completely wrong. And the next month, I'd do the same thing. And I didn't really check my spreadsheet in the middle of the month. And if I had budgeted, say, $50 for an activity and then ended up wanting to spend 200 on it, I spent my 200 on it, and I didn't rearrange any of my other finances to accommodate that. Left me in a lot of months with less than desirable situations at the end of the month. And I finally came across one that has been very effective. I want to go over a presentation of that now. I've been using an app to manage my finances called You Need a Budget, or YNAB for short, and it's seriously changed my life because it's more than just software. It's a method for managing your money. Today, I'd like to teach you that method. It's called the Four Rules, and it's all about gaining more control over your finances. In fact, if you follow these four rules, you won't just have more control, you'll have total control over your money. Let's talk more about that word control. Budgeting is all about aligning your money with your priorities. It's about using more of your money to build the life you want rather than spending it on things that you don't care about. And to do that, you need to have control over what your money is doing for you. But let's go further back, because control is not a means to an end. The end goal is not really control. The end goal is confidence. Confidence that I'll be able to pay my bills, go on vacation, whatever I need to do to build the life I want. A budget will give you confidence and peace. But if I want to gain control, to get confidence, I have to back up one more step. I need clarity. A lack of clarity around money is the main reason people have so much trouble taking control. If I have clarity, I will have control because I'll know what I need to take control of. If I want to put the fire out, I need to know where the fire is. And this leads me to a commonly asked question about money. Can I afford this? We ask this question every single day, multiple times a day. If I buy groceries, will I have money for the electric bill next week? This question is really a cry for clarity. It's not clear to me if I can afford this. Can I? Well, to answer that question, I first need to find out whether I have enough money to buy something at all. So I check my bank balance. You've got to start somewhere, right? Here's my balance, $1,500. I'm going to ask you a few questions here, and you can answer. Can I afford $50 out for dinner? Can I afford $100 for some new shoes? First thought, you might say yes. I actually have a lot of money right now. But the truth is, it's really hard to know. Actually, it's impossible to know for sure only by looking at this number, because that number may need to cover a multitude of expenses. I may have the money for these things, but I can't know for sure if spending that money now will put me into trouble later. Checking the bank balance doesn't give you clarity, but everyone does this. How many of you have ever decided you could or couldn't afford something based on looking at your checking account balance? People use this method a lot. Instead, let's do something different to get some clarity and take control. And I'll tell you, I used this method when I first had a banking account in college, and I had no idea about processing times, or the computers didn't update on the weekend at that point. And so I checked my bank balance on Friday, and let's say there was $50 in there. I'd spend $25 on Friday, Saturday, I'd go and check. I would not have remembered what my Friday balance was, but I'd see it's $50. And so I'd spend $25. And I'd do the same thing on Sunday. And then Monday morning, mid morning, all of a sudden I'd be overdrawn. And I will tell you, it was unpleasant. So let's talk about rule one. Give every dollar a job rather than checking the bank balance when the moment and guessing whether I can maybe truly afford something. We're going to decide ahead of time what we want those dollars to do. That way, we can make decisions when we're considering everything at once and when we're in a more neutral frame of mind. We're going to be purposeful. We're going to be intentional. We're going to prioritize. So let's go back to that $1,500 and give every dollar a job. I may not be able to cover everything with that money, but I can answer the question, what does this money need to do before I get paid again? This is a very simplified example, so don't get too hung up on the actual numbers. So let's move that money into all these more specific categories. Now I have answered the question, what does this money need to do before I get paid again? And because I've done that, we're ready to ask the can I afford this question. Can I spend $100 at the grocery store? Yes. Can I spend $30 at the movies? No. You can see I have clarity now. I know how to answer this question of can I afford this with quick confidence. Where did that clarity come from? Came from embracing the scarcity of my money. When I acknowledged that I only have $1,500 right now, and that money can only do so much, my priorities got crystal clear. I know what my money is going to do for me. I know what I can spend on each of these things. I can answer the question of, can I afford this with quick confidence? Now, to get that clarity, it was important that I worked with only the money I have right now. I could have said, well, I'm getting another paycheck in a couple of weeks, so I'll allocate that money too. Doing that may seem like it will make things easier, but it will actually make things harder because imagining more money does not eliminate the decisions you need to make about the money you have right now. All that will do is eliminate the clarity. If I work with more money than I have, I'm not embracing the scarcity I have right now, and I'll lose the clarity as a result. We can always imagine more money. We can always say, what if? But imagining more money just muddies the water. Remember, clarity is what we're after. Clarity will lead to control, which will lead to confidence. So now I have more control. Do I have total control? Not yet. And here's why. Please tell me the date of your next big car repair and how much it will be. Anyone? It's a ridiculous question because I'm asking you to predict the future. Cars all need repairs and maintenance at some point, right? But they're unpredictable because we don't know when or how much. And there are a lot of unpredictable expenses like this in our life. Because we can't predict these expenses, we assume we can't do anything about them. Let's visualize this. Here are my monthly expenses. Blue at the bottom is rent, green is groceries, and so on. This is how most people imagine a budget works. You list your monthly expenses, you set aside only for that. But here's what happens when we're not preparing for those unexpected expenses. Here's a car repair in February. Didn't see that coming. Here's an emergency trip to the vet. Oh, and there's the holidays. That one always happens in December. Feels like it takes me by surprise every year. This is a frustrating way to live. It's a reactive position. We're just waiting for something bad to happen. So if we don't prepare for those expenses, which again are real and will happen, what will we do? How will we pay for them? We turn to debt. Expenses like these are one of the main reasons folks end up in credit card debt. If you're not saving for non-monthly expenses, that money will escape. Money you can't really afford to spend. It'll be spent on things that probably aren't as important to you as having a working car or a healthy dog. We've all had moments where we wish we had the money we spent on one thing back so we could use it on something more important. That's what Rule 2 is all about, embracing your true expenses. Non-monthly expenses are real expenses. That's why we call them true expenses. They will happen, but they're easy to ignore because they're not as urgent or predictable as my rent or my grocery bill. That's why we call them true expenses. I can decide in January that I want to spend $600 on Christmas and just start setting aside $50 for it. I'll be ready. Rule 2 is a debt prevention strategy. Think back to the car repair. How would you feel on the 1 to 10 awesome scale if you had $500 just sitting around waiting for the car to break down? You'd feel great. So instead of only thinking about our monthly expenses and living on this roller coaster ride, we're going to start setting aside money every single month for car repairs and vet bills and the holidays, and we even out the roller coaster a bit. We've acknowledged that we might not have as much discretionary money as we think we do, and we've set ourselves up for a lot more peace and security. And I'll tell you, things are more predictable than you realize. You'll get better and better at this as time goes on. So I have control, more control than I did with Rule 1 alone. Now I have control over non-monthly expenses. But do I have total control? Not yet. Anybody familiar with Murphy's Law? Anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible moment and in the worst possible way. This is Murphy's Law of car repairs. You manage to save up $500 for car repairs, and a repair costs $600. That's where Rule 3 comes in. Roll with the punches. This rule is about adjusting your strategy. We tend to think of budgets as rigid, inflexible, something that can't be changed. So let's apply that thinking to one of the most timeless strategy games of all. Tic-tac-toe. We all know this game. It's fun, but a little boring, right? So let's add a few new rules. Some rules that will make this game really unfair, but reflect the way a lot of people budget. You have to choose all your spots on the board before the game starts, and you aren't allowed to make a change. Let's say you chose these 4 spots. Seems like a good choice, but remember, you can't change them. Now, I don't know what spots you've chosen, so we'll mark them in gray so we remember, but let's assume I don't know this. I pick the dead center spot. You've basically lost a turn. Since you can't make any adjustments based on what I've done, you have to choose a predetermined slot, so you go with the lower left. I choose the spot right above that. I'm 1 move from winning. You can see that, but you aren't allowed to make an adjustment, so you make a totally pointless move and boom, I win. Doesn't this feel ridiculous? You would never agree to play this game if these were the real rules. We could play 100 games and I'd win 99 of them, and the one you won would just be because of luck. But look back at your original plan. You made some good choices. You took control of the center. You made sure you got a row, and you put in 1 more X to hopefully block my moves. You made a good decision with the information that you had. So the problem isn't the choices you made ahead of time. The problem is you weren't allowed to adjust and respond to what I was doing. This rigidity is a very fragile strategy. We don't want our finances to be fragile. So enough tic-tac-toe. Let's do a real-life money example. This is our budget from before. $30 for dining out, $400 to save for a new phone. Then an old friend comes into town who I haven't seen in years. We want to go out for really great sushi and some drinks, but $30 is not going to be enough. If I want to do this, I'm going to need some money from somewhere else. So I decide the phone can wait a month. We'll take $70 out of there and move it to sushi. Done. The information changed? I didn't know my friend was coming into town when I first created this plan. Now I do. My priorities have changed. When unexpected expenses come up, this is the question we often ask. Where is the money going to come from? Usually we ask it with a lot of frustration. This question is another cry for clarity. I'm really saying, I don't know how I'll pay for this. The frustration doesn't come from the question. It comes from our inability to answer it. But with the budget, I had clarity, and I can answer that question, no problem. So I have more control if I can make changes to my plan when I get new information. But do I have total control? Not yet, because I'm still at the mercy of my pay cycle. I can do all of these things, but still continue to live paycheck to paycheck. How long could you go before you need to use your next paycheck? Is it a day? 3 days? A week? That's the paycheck to paycheck cycle. Your money isn't old enough. If it's born the day it enters your account, it's only a day or a week old when it leaves. You've got all these expenses piling up, and you're waiting for the money to arrive so you can pay them. This next rule I'm going to explain flips this on its head. You'll have money, and that money will be sitting around waiting for the bills. We want you to get to a point where you're using real money to budget for the next month before it arrives. I'm sure that sounds insurmountable, but people are doing it every day. They do it by following the previous 3 rules. You give every dollar a job. When doing so, you prioritize, so you will naturally find things to cut that aren't important enough to you. You'll save for non-monthly bills by embracing your true expenses. You'll adapt and adjust and stay in the game. Someday you'll get a paycheck, maybe near the end of the month, and you won't need all of it for the current month. Maybe it's $100, but you'll realize that the current month is all set, and you can start setting that money aside for the next month. That will snowball. Eventually, you'll be able to cover all of next month with the money earned in the current month. At that point, you're perpetually ahead. You've broken the paycheck to paycheck cycle. And in case you're wondering, it takes most wine havers 4 to 6 months to get to this point. But regardless of how long it takes, it's powerful. You won't want to go back. This is the goal behind Rule 4 of the YNAB method. All those dollars assigned to the future sit and wait. While they wait, they age. They get older. We want you to age your money. We want you spending money that you earned at least a month ago. We've covered a lot fairly rapidly, so let's recap. Can I afford this is a very stressful question, especially when the only information you have to answer the question is your bank balance. It's like a doctor trying to determine whether or not a bone is broken without an x ray. To solve this, we follow Rule 1 and give every dollar a job. We discover where scarcity truly lies in our finances. We constrain ourselves to deal with only the money we have on hand, and in much smaller amounts than we're used to. $100 for something specific instead of $1,500 for a bunch of stuff we've mentally accounted for inaccurately in our heads. Rule 2 says that as we're giving every dollar a job, we have to keep an eye on larger, less frequent expenses. These, along with our monthly expenses, are what make up our true expenses. We break them up into monthly amounts and try to normalize each month. Rule 3 acknowledges that rigid budgets break. Budgeting is the process of getting information, planning, getting more information, and planning again. It's not guessing or tea-leaf reading or crystal ball gazing. Rule 4 says we need to stock up on water, so to speak. We want to age our money where the next dollar we spend was earned at least 30 days ago. This is done by slowly not just funding what we need this month, but also what we need next month. Follow these rules consistently over time, and you will gain total control over your money. You will be able to make decisions with clarity and walk with confidence and peace. Now we're going to have some Q&A time. If you have other questions about either mortgages or budgeting or anything having to do with real estate, if you're interested in the market, if you're looking to buy and you have some questions, if you just have a seemingly random question, please go ahead and leave a comment for us.
All right, Paul, thank you so much for that. That was a wonderful presentation. I did have a couple questions that came up that I think could really help people when they're setting up these budgets and working on saving up for the home buying process.
Sure.
So number one, you talked about embracing scarcity. I think that's a topic that's going to be really hard for a lot of people, especially in this day and age where you can buy things on Amazon, get them shipped to your home. You don't really see the money coming out of your bank account. It's very easy to stop in and grab Chick-fil-A or anything like that. So whenever it comes to that embracing scarcity, what tips do you have for getting out of the mindset of spend, spend, spend to budget and save?
Yeah, so this is actually one of my favorite things to think about. So if you are going to say yes to one thing, it means you have said no to a great many others. You and I are doing this video. I'm really excited, but we had to say no to everything else to be here. I'm happy to be here. I think it was a good answer. Will you do that when you're making your decisions? Back before I ever thought about buying a house, my wife and I were each independently going to the coffee shop 5 days a week, and each of us spent $5 every trip. We were spending at least $50 a week on, they were pleasant, right? On these nice drinks. I always got the caramel frappuccino, right? It's basically a milkshake disguised as a coffee. Well, you've had coffee with me, Clark, and you know now I'm a black coffee drinker. Not only is the black coffee a lot cheaper, but I also realized for a single, I mean, this was like 17 years ago, right? For a single $15 purchase, I could have a Mr. Coffee in my home. I could make my own coffee for $10 a month.
Yep.
And so I didn't give up coffee, but I changed my habit, right? I didn't say no to the coffee shop. I still go to the coffee shop. I really enjoy it. But now when I with intention instead of out of default behavior, where I am deciding what choices I will make with my money so that I have the choice to spend that money or to not spend that money. And everybody is going to have a different choice on that. That's why in the presentation, we didn't kind of go down the Dave Ramsey route and say, you better not be buying new cars or this or that. I'm a huge fan of Dave Ramsey, but if you listen to him, he's very opinionated, right? But you get to choose what's important to you in your life. And it also acknowledges that you yes to everything. We all, no matter what our financial situation, have the same amount of time. And so that's a scarcity that we can't avoid. Much to my frustration, it doesn't matter how many things I'm interested in, I can only do so many in a day. And so whenever you have the scarcity mindset, when I first heard it, I thought it was very overbearing and negative. It's actually been incredibly freeing because it tells me it doesn't tell me, but it has helped me to discover what I need to say no to so that I can live the life that I want to live. Right? I'm not saying don't go to the coffee house and get caramel frappuccinos or whatever your favorite drink is. I'm saying for me, that was a yes that I wasn't intending to make. I was just doing it out of habit, and I realized I wanted something more than I. There was something in my life that was more important than that coffee drink, well, that sugar drink, really, and that was having a down payment for a home. Right? Um, I was also going out to eat every single day at lunch. And I'm not talking about fast food. I was going to a sit down restaurant and being there for an hour and ordering all the stuff I liked and dessert. And I was able to save hundreds of dollars just by changing my habit around eating instead of going out to eat being the habit again with some intention. And this did take a lot more work than turning on Mr. Coffee at home. But was able to actually live a much healthier lifestyle by finding ways to cook easily at home to the point where it's enjoyable, right? I still have the time constraint that can be stressful sometimes, but I enjoy making good food at home. I, again, right, to eat sometimes, but when I go to eat now, it's a choice that I made, a decision for that experience instead of just a default yes to that and no to everything else that it means just because I didn't apply any thought to it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think basically what you're saying is you don't have to deprive yourself of the things that you do want. You just have to
Right.
make sure you're not doing them in abundance to the point where it hurts you.
Well, I will say, like, if what you want is to have no constraint on spending, then yes, it's going to be constraining.
Right.
Well, I grew up like that, Clark. I grew up with pretty constrained financial resources in the home, and my vision of adult life was unrestrained spending, and that's one of the reasons I had those default behaviors. And it did not bring me happiness, which is what I expected it to. And being intentional about what activities I participated in and where my money was spent has brought me a lot more peace and satisfaction.
Thanks for answering that question. Love that answer. Next one that I had for you, actually, you mentioned down payment. So when we're looking at buying homes, we have down
Mhm.
payments, we have closing costs, we have the appraisal fees and inspections.
Mhm.
So how can people start to save up for those? They've got their budget. They know they want to buy in a year.
Mhm.
What is your advice for them starting to save up for that?
So my answer to this goes right back to my answer for question one. You need to decide what's important in your life, right? There are a lot of people who are into expensive car accessories or clothing accessories or the sneakers themselves are like a whole industry. Saw a house for sale that had like a sneaker library. Sneakers came with the house, but it was millions of dollars sale, right? Um, and so you need to make the decisions about what is important in your life and what you could do without for a short period of time, right? Whenever I was trying to free up some cash with this initial down payment saving, I made a budget and realized that I had been wasting a lot of made at least a 10% raise without getting a raise. And then I realized I had a lot of things in my life that I didn't care about, right? I don't know if you've read Marie Kondo's The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, but kind of, I hadn't even heard of that book at that time. If you have not read it, I'd recommend it. Um, it basically says you might have a lot of clutter in your life that's also cluttering up your mind and your experience of life. I had a lot of things in my life that were of value to other people, but no longer held value to me. I sold some stuff. I sold some stuff. I changed my spending habits, um, and just didn't give up anything I wanted. Just didn't say yes to those as often so that I could have a higher priority yes. I save up for a down payment. The advice that first seminar that I went to on buying a home is live like you are broke right now. Live like you're broke. And he specifically said, don't buy sneakers, don't buy coffee, do all that. Like, you don't need new shoes, and you can make coffee at home. That's why I use those two examples, because that's what that guy used. And and we were able to save an embarrassingly large amount in a matter of months, which really exposed to me the power of intentional spending versus a default, which the default is in effect the marketing that you have been exposing yourself to. Does that
Yeah.
answer that question for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to have that intention of what's important for you to spend that money on. What are you willing to be scarce on? Are you willing to be scarce on the sneakers so that you can buy a home? Or do you want to keep buying your sneakers and now you're scarce on being able to buy a home? So,
I will say another strategy that I have personally employed is get a second job. Right. Didn't have to be another full-time job. You can get a part-time job or a gig job. That's what I did. I got a job with gig economy structure, and wasn't forever. That's why I did it. I know it was just going to be for a few months. Did it for a few months, and then went back to living my life that I had lived before.
yeah,
I don't want to be working two or three jobs all the time, but in order to meet my financial goals, I did want to be working a couple of jobs for a determined period of time.
absolutely. Absolutely. And also, or overtime. If your job has the option to
Yes.
work overtime.
Right.
Last question that I have for you is credit card debt. It's
Okay.
something that a lot of Americans are struggling with right now. It's
Mm-hmm.
piling up. It's at the highest rate it's been in years. So
Right.
when you have somebody who is struggling with that credit card debt, maybe they've got $5,000, $10,000 that's just sitting there, charging them interest every month. What kind of strategies can we to employ to start to chip that down?
So all of the strategies we've already talked about to free up money in your existing cash flow apply here. And then the next step that I think is missing, and I know he didn't come up with it, but he was my first exposure to it, was Dave Ramsey's debt snowball, right? Forget about your interest rate, because if math was what was motivating your behavior, you wouldn't be in credit card debt for some of the part. I realize there are many people who have been in very tight spots over the last multiple years, and they really have not seen another way around it. But I would pay the debt that's the smallest, free up all the money you can, start making the choices instead of thinking I deserve this or I want this essentially temporary pleasure. I really like donuts, but then when I'm done eating them, I don't feel very good. Right. So you gotta be able to say no for a short period of time to get through to something you care about more. And it sometimes it takes practice, right? Even though I grew up in a very disciplined household, and then I had experiences of more discipline in my life, there have been times of less discipline. So please don't beat yourself up, right? We've all been there. If you're in a tight spot and it's 100% your fault, that's okay. That means the great news about that is that means you're the one who can, without other assistance, get yourself out of the situation. So free up what you can in your budget, work overtime, get a second job, sell some stuff off, and start paying the debt down. And when you start paying debts off bit by bit, it really does compound quickly. Now, depending on how much debt you have and how much money you're able to free up, it's going to depend on what quickly looks like for you. But it's the best method I know how to get through it. And those psychological wins really do help with behavioral change, right? I tell you, like the second week of working my second job, I didn't feel like going to work at night. But you know what I did feel like? Achieving my other financial goal. So I kept going. I kept saying yes to my goal, and I kept working in situation when without that, without that motivation, I wouldn't have done it. I would have just said, check me out. I'm not open for any gigs. I'm done. And so it's a lot of times it's a matter of motivation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that is all of my questions. Do you have any questions for me or any closing remarks?
Well, so I guess question for you is you're covering in your other videos, right? A lot of people seem to have a lot of misconceptions. People are very attentive to whatever news sources they have reporting as the rates, and they think to themselves, I can't buy now because the rates are high. And I think in their mind they may be thinking, I'm going to be stuck here forever. So I was hoping you could just kind of address that a little bit. I don't think people understand how individualized rates are.
Mhm.
They see the news channel say rates are. I mean, I just looked it up. We're looking at, I think, 6.63 national average for Freddie Mac. Does that mean every loan that you process gets a 6.63 interest rate?
I absolutely love this question. Thank you for asking that.
Sure.
It is, I think I covered this in Mortgage Myths number one, but not everybody gets the same rate. There's 10 or so different factors, somewhere around 10 different factors that go into everybody's individual rate, like your down payment, like your credit score, what kind of house you're buying, whether it's a condo or a single family, like all these different things will influence your rate. And even though rates are in the sixes right now, historically, that's kind of average. Of course, we had the 3% that was right after COVID that I really hope everybody can get out of their mind because it's probably not coming back around unless we have another COVID. Like that was a product of COVID. So unless you want to go through another pandemic and shutdown and all that, we're probably not going to see 6% or 3% again.
Mhm.
Sorry. Um, but historically, I mean, if you look back when like my parents bought their house, rates were 14, 15%. Now, of course, housing values were a lot lower then, but that carries into my next point of housing values are going to continue to increase.
Mhm.
In Louisville, they increase 5% every year. Traditionally, it's like 4%, between 4 and 6%, but regularly it's 5% every year. So that the interest rate coming down is never going to outpace the amount that that home is increasing every year.
Well, that doesn't even take into account day-to-day inflation, right? The inflation numbers that are often quoted remove groceries and mortgage.
Yeah.
But interest rates, if you get a mortgage, you're locked into that rate.
Yeah. Whereas if you rent,
You can refinance to go lower, but it won't ever raise. And then when inflation carries on at its 3 to 4% per year in a few years, inflation has already outpaced that interest. Even at a high interest rate, we last July we were at 8, is
yeah,
what we were seeing. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, going along with that, you lock in your mortgage rate. Your rate stays the same until you refinance into a lower rate. But if you're renting, that's going to go up every single year with inflation. Your $1,000 a month payment goes to 1,100 the next year, it goes to 1,200 the next year. It just keeps going up. Whereas maybe you buy a house now with a 6.5% interest rate, and it is $1,200 a month or $1,100 a month, but you don't have to worry about that going up every single year.
Right.
So,
Right. You can make it go down if the rates play,
yep,
but it doesn't go up. And if rates do go up, it's like you won the lottery.
exactly. Exactly. You're safe. You're safe either way. And then I think a lot of the things that are one of the big things that a lot of people miss out on too is just how much equity, which is the value of the home subtracted from your mortgage,
Okay.
subtract your mortgage
So for
away.
an easy example, if my house is worth 200,000 and I got 150,000 mortgage, I've got 50,000 in equity there, right?
Exactly. That's your money.
Right.
That's your money. That's your savings account. And if next year, let's take that $200,000 house, for example, take that and add the 5%. So now it's a $210,000 house. You just paid yourself $10,000 that year because that increase in home value goes right into your equity. So now you are $10,000 richer, plus whatever you paid down on your mortgage. So
Fantastic.
owning a home is the first step to building long-term wealth for most people.
Very, very commonly the critical component to wealth building.
100%.
Yep.
100%.
Well, fantastic. Clark, it's been great spending time with you today. Did you have any other questions?
I'm good. Do you have any other questions?
That's all I have for now.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to jump on here with me. And for everybody that is watched, we appreciate you. We love your feedback. Drop us a like or a comment. Let us know your thoughts. We'll see you later.
Thanks.